Hey, I'm Jim Dewey, and this is Combating the Narrative. Now, it's not controversial at this point in time to say that the West is in dire straits, though we may all disagree on the degree to which the rot has spread. I'm typically against criticizing those on my side of the aisle, or punching right, as it were. But as I'm reflecting on exactly how and why we, as a society, got to this point, it's clear to me that a few things need to be said. Or, to put it another way, we need to analyze why, to this point, conservatives have failed. And it comes down to two key factors, two key characteristics of the conservative movement at large that have absolutely hamstrung us: fear and arrogance. These characteristics are something our adversaries don't possess, or at least not to the degree that we collectively possess them. Now, it's worth clarifying who I mean by conservative or conservative movement. I'm talking about boomer conservatives or boomer cons, the Fox News types, those who wouldn't be labeled alt-right like you and I. Though make no mistake, many on the alt-right are guilty of these same political sins. We're too afraid of social rejection. We're too affected by social pressure. And this is part of the reason why the mainstream media has been so effective at indoctrinating and inculcating the West. Because a handful of media executives at the few media companies that exist get to determine what is inside the mainstream by virtue of the fact that they control what the majority of people see on a daily basis. We have unwittingly let our adversaries define for us a range of socially acceptable belief sets, and in so doing, the Overton window has shifted dramatically to the left. And the conservative, who derives his sense of self-worth and moral rectitude from the affirmation of those around him, rather than adherence to a set of moral principles handed down from generation to generation, is particularly susceptible. And this was the thin end of the wedge for progressives. This is the method they used to turn that which was mainstream belief 50 years ago into a set of beliefs that today is widely regarded as extreme. The boomer con chafes at the idea of holding a set of beliefs that will make him into a social pariah. So not only does he alter his own belief system to fit into society, he will willingly serve as a golem for our political adversaries. The conservative is the first to call out right-wing extremists, or those who hold a set of beliefs that are determined by the powers that be to be double plus bad. There are those within our own camp who leap at the opportunity to punch right for affirmation, to erode our own political movement from within just for the opportunity to score some social good boy points by loudly cheering as Alex Jones gets ordered by a court to pay $1 bajillion, or make fun of those crazies in the Mormon Church or the Westboro Baptist Church, or to join the Never Trump movement because they're upright and moral conservatives, unlike those crazy Trump supporters. Ask yourself, how often do you see this behavior on the left? Do you ever see communists facing widespread criticism from the left? Open communists. Did you see anyone on the left decrying and denouncing the behavior of groups like BLM and the Not Fucking Around Anymore coalition? And this is the fundamental difference between us and them. Conservatives are chumps. You see, the conservative will clutch his pearls and try to appeal to social pressure on the other side of the aisle. They'll say things like, imagine if our situations were reversed, or the Democrats are the real racists. And this behavior stems from a lack of comprehension of the type of struggle they're engaged in, an existential one. You see, to the conservative, it's about rules, social rules, and operating within the established system. And the left has gotten to define what the system is and what the rules are. And this is where conservatives get outplayed every time. They're playing checkers while the left is playing 4D chess. Conservatives genuinely believe that the left is, on some level, arguing in good faith for a set of principled positions. They buy into this moral framework, of which the cardinal sin is being racist and the original sin is being white. And they fail to recognize that the goal here is not to establish some sort of justice, but demographic replacement, cultural Marxism, and the destruction of the West, so a certain subset of the population can acquire more power and more wealth. And so the conservative is absolutely floored. He's confused when he points out the double standard or the anti-white tendencies and beliefs of the left. They'll say things like, imagine if the situation were reversed, expecting some sort of social or societal pressure that they face to not do a racism to work in their favor this time. But it won't, because the goal has never been to end racism. The goal has been a net transfer of wealth and power. Now, why have we been completely unable to recognize collectively this negative change in society? Well, in part, it stems from an innate sense of altruism most conservatives feel, stemming from having lived in high-trust societies for centuries. They don't feel the same desire to get one over on their neighbor, and this feeling seems to be unique to Western societies. And so we, conservatives, have been willfully blind to the shift from a high-trust society to a low-trust society. Because guile and deceit are not in our nature, we fail to see it in others. There's a sense that the other side of the aisle means well, they're simply misguided, and they wouldn't be actively trying to harm us. And beyond our own nature as people, some of this comes from blind chauvinism, a sense of petty national pride. If the United States is truly the greatest nation that's ever existed, or the West is truly the greatest society that's ever existed, surely it could never be subverted. Surely it could never face destruction as every other society in history has before it. And if you lack a sense of awareness and a historical perspective with regard to how easily empires can be toppled, you will fail to see the approach of danger when it comes. And we as a party have long forgotten why the United States was, and the West was, so great. Why we as a people have been responsible for most technological advancements for 1,000 years. Why we as a people are responsible for establishing civilization. We've fallen into the trap of a sort of civic nationalism, where we believe that the nation itself and the system is great, and that this greatness is the result of a near-perfect system, not the people who created the system, populated the nation, and forged it from nothingness into being. We've forgotten that the reason we're great is a question of who, not what. If America is great, not because of its founding stock, but because of its system, then the United States and the West in general must be in possession of magic dirt. That is to say, if what makes us a great nation isn't a sense of fraternity and extended kinship with our neighbors, or a shared culture, or a set of unique genetic characteristics unique to this population set, and we eschew any sense of collectivism or any collectivist ideology in favor of rugged individualism, then it was the place, not the people, that made the society great. And no matter who you are, what you believe, where you came from, what your family's history is, the moment you set foot on Western soil or American soil and experience democracy and freedom for yourself, you'll assimilate, become like us. You're a future doctor and lawyer now, and you've lost all the characteristics that your people collectively possess that have turned your nations into complete shitholes. And this is a novel belief, historically speaking. This is something that prior to 1965 did not exist. The West has understood for millennia that if you import the third world, you become the third world. Obviously using the term third world not in its sense when it was originally created, but just as a substitute for the phrase shithole country. And this shift, again, came from mass communication and those who control mass communication. If you've made it completely unacceptable to be racist within your set of moral beliefs, this ridiculous framework that you just made up out of thin air, and we, conservatives, only operate within this moral framework, and we've bought into this belief system hook, line, and sinker, then you can't admit this point. You can't admit that there are genetic differences between population sets, and those genetic differences are responsible for the disparate outcomes, not culture or exploitation by whites. Now, as an aside, I don't have any issue with Christianity or Christendom, but I am going to criticize Christians. In particular, I take issue with how Christians have allowed Christianity to be subverted from within. Modern Christianity has actively accelerated the collapse of the West. They've been hoodwinked into thinking that Jesus was all about toleration of evil and turning the other cheek, or allowing yourself to be taken advantage of, or taking in immigrants, or how God made us all equal, even though that's canonically incorrect. Again, progressives who don't believe in God or Jesus and actively hold Christians like you in contempt have been allowed to tell you what Jesus would have thought about the political topic du jour and how 2 millennia of church doctrine and Western culture is wrong. And what matters isn't the genetic makeup of your society, but what religion they adhere to. And it's like, okay, you would rather live in an all-Christian and brown nation than an all-white and not Christian nation. Why don't you go live in Ethiopia and see how that works for you? Like, enjoy your transsexual lesbian pastors. You deserve it. That's retarded on its face, but I digress. Along with fear of social rejection and fear of change, there's also a fear of being uncomfortable or experiencing discomfort. Conservatives, and especially boomer conservatives, though they don't want to admit it, are very hedonistic. There's a reason that "I just wanted to grill" meme exists. As long as there's plenty of bread and circuses to go around, you can eat your McDonald's and go to the Walmart and watch your sports ball and live in your McMansion that your children will never be able to afford. Conservatives seem to be completely okay with societal collapse and a complete lack of morality. They're okay with this wave of third world immigrants. They're okay with the destruction of their nation and their birthright, so long as they feel like they got theirs and they can feel like they won life. They got to live in a white society and have cheap real estate and a livable wage and low crime rates and all this stuff. So they're rather disinclined to help you out, the next generation, by organizing and trying to do anything about it. Furthermore, it strokes their ego to believe that, the reason they were successful and you're not is because they tried harder than you and they pulled themselves up by their bootstraps and you're just lazy. And this isn't just limited to the boomers, though I will pick on them for it because they're especially bad. But this fear of discomfort also leads to an unwillingness to organize. They're comfortable, so why should they go out of their way to organize to begin with? Furthermore, they know they're going to achieve next level negative attention from media if they ever do organize. I mean, just look at what happened with Charlottesville or even January 6th. And quite frankly, organizing and agitating for social change or political change that benefits you as a group is hard work, so why should they do it? And they use this specter of government surveillance or federal agent infiltration to sort of justify sitting on their asses and not doing anything. Now, I'm not denying by any stretch of the imagination that the FBI or other government agencies are actively involved in infiltrating any right-wing group and are probably trying to groom people into becoming domestic terrorists. But the fear of federal infiltration is far more powerful than actual federal infiltration could ever be. Yes, the government is very powerful, but there's only so much power they can possibly have. And furthermore, if you don't want the ATF to come shoot your dog or to get arrested by the FBI, well then just don't do anything illegal, retard. And I think a great example of that is the group Patriot Front. Like, there's all these people on 4chan and the dissident right that are looking for some way to organize to affect some sort of change or at least slow down the creep of progressivism. And if given enough membership, a group like Patriot Front could probably affect meaningful political change. However, nobody joins because they're paralyzed by fear because they believe it to be a Fed honeypot. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. I don't know. Jury's out. I'm not a member. But don't commit crimes then, retard. Like, I don't know what to tell you. There's only so much they can trump up against you. Yeah, maybe from time to time you'll get busted going to some sort of a rally and get arrested out of the back of a U-Haul. But so what? None of those people faced any serious charges. Yeah, maybe social shame. Maybe they got fired, but is life so dear and peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of your 9 to 5? Like, who gives a shit? Or maybe you pretend to care about optics. Oh, it looks terrible if we rally together and try to affect meaningful political change. Well, number one, just don't do anything retarded again. Like, don't show up waving swastikas and carrying around tiki torches. That's a bad look. And immediately call out anyone who does it as a Fed. And this is where I break with guys like Ryan Falk, too, because it's like, you can call it a retard rally all you want and sit here and think you're galaxy brain for not wanting to attend it, but ultimately there's only so much that shitposting on 4chan and posting YouTube videos is going to do. There's a time and place for it. I think that certainly some of the things the dissident right has done online has been impactful, but unless it's going to eventually manifest itself into some real physical change, you may as well be doing nothing. And we all know full well that the left is not afraid to get arrested, especially if it stands to advance their political agenda. No, I'm not saying go commit crimes, but like if the consequence of you mobilizing and trying to affect real political change and potentially succeeding is you get arrested for protesting without a permit, or you get a disorderly conduct charge, like, who cares? You're just a weak, lazy coward, and we need to purge that from our movement. You want to affect real change in this country, in this society, then I'm sorry. Legal trouble is part and parcel of that. And the shitlibs recognize this. They even wear it as a badge of honor. Take, for example, that recent photo of AOC pretending to get arrested, holding her hands behind her back as a cop's walking her away. The left knows the value of martyrs in that sense. Take into consideration, too, what happens if your movement wins. Like, if they can make Nelson Mandela, the guy who bombed school buses full of children, out to be a hero, should the right come out on top, history will look favorably on you. And if the left comes out on top, you are going to be reviled anyway, so what does it matter? But if fear is not your sin, then perhaps arrogance is. It's absolutely remarkable to me how the right completely underestimates their adversaries. The progressives and the cultural Marxists have absolutely been eating our lunch since circa 1965, if not earlier, and yet we have the temerity to think to ourselves, ha ha ha, those weak snowflakes, they'll never win. True, on an individual level, maybe they're not quite your intellectual or physical equal, but this doesn't translate over to whether or not they will advance their political agenda. They're willing to organize, and you're not. They're willing to break the rules, you're not. They believe the ends justifies the means, you don't, and you are losing. You have managed to conserve absolutely nothing. And this has been especially true on a social and moral level the last decade and a half. They have institutional power now. We don't. They're willing to abuse the power they wield by being in positions of power, and we're not. We respect the rule of law and tradition. They don't. They will play dirty and do whatever it takes to come out on top. We're the dissidents now. We need to start acting like it. The Overton window has shifted. No matter what you believe, if you're to the right of Karl Marx or AOC, or to put it more concretely, if you're white, no matter what you do, you will be an extremist. Embrace it. Stop trying to appease and back. Stop trying to be one of the reasonable and good conservatives. Stop buckling under social pressure and pressure from the media. You will never appease them. No matter what you do, you will always be wrong. No matter what ground you cede to them, they will always take more. I use the term progressive because the progression never will stop until these people completely hold the reins of power in hand, and people like you and I are no longer a factor. Drop your arrogance and pretension, stop being afraid, and embrace being a radical, or at least a radical within the paradigm the left has set up. Reject their framework completely. Bear this in mind. In a world so sick, and in the minds of people so demented, I can't think of a greater badge of honor or a greater indicator that what I'm doing is right and what I believe is right than to be considered a radical and an extremist.